anyway, I want to move on to the next topic, and that would be, and I think it's just as interesting, the crypto hype that Trump has ignited now. For example, a few days before taking office with a meme coin. What or who do you think is the mastermind behind these all digital currencies, and what do you think is the outcome of this? The outcome supposed to be of this crypto hype, like being ignited and.
So, so it's a rich and complex space, crypto, because you have Bitcoin, which is a Ponzi scheme. Then you have stablecoin, which is being used to promote the dollar hegemony worldwide. And then you have a variety of cryptos of people who sincerely want to provide alternative payment systems. So it's not one thing, it's many things. Now, why is it being promoted? One is because digital technology allows you to do a lot more than you could do in the old infrastructure. And people want to try and do that. And they want to get cross-border payments quickly with lower fees, et cetera. So there's a natural inclination to use new technology and prototype all sorts of new things you can do. Okay, the people who've really been promoting crypto are the ones who want an all-digital monetary system for control. In other words, they want to cancel currency, and because they want a control grid. And so it is very much in their interest to encourage people to prototype and try things, one, to figure out how to do it. So you want people who are trying to build freedom to instead prototype your, how to do your control grid, how to use this stuff. So part of it is you're trying to get everybody to prototype it and figure it out. But I think ultimately what they want is they want an all digital monetary system, and they're trying to figure out what's the best way to get there. And crypto is a part of that. But, so is everything that's going on with dollars. So is everything going on with frequent flyer miles. So is everything, all digital transactions, are working and being used to go towards there. Now, that doesn't mean everybody in that space wants to be part of a digital control grid.
Right.
At all. Right.
No, definitely. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so what's happening with the Bitcoin strategic reserve?
Right, that would be my next question.
Okay, so you have several things going on in the government. So you have David Sachs running a group that's looking at, should we do a strategic reserve?
So it's still in, they're still considering it. It's not yet a law, the Bitcoin strategic reserve?
No, it's okay. What happened was the Department of Justice has seized Bitcoin. And it had 210,000 Bitcoin, I think, but it was selling it. And so Trump said he was going to fire Gary Gensler, and then he was going to freeze the sales. And he was proposing to move it over to Treasury. But now what he said is he's brought Sachs in as the crypto and AI czar. And he said to Sachs, okay, figure out what we should do here. Now, then he's taken the Secretary of Treasury and the Secretary of Commerce, Lutnick, who's not yet confirmed, and put them in charge of figuring out a sovereign wealth fund, which he's created by executive order. So you got the crypto committee, if you will, because Sachs is bringing in, I think, an advisory board of people, and then you've got the sovereign wealth fund team. And here's where I think they're headed. You also have an effort to persuade the states to start to mandate purchases of Bitcoin. Now, if you look at Bitcoin, there is no reason why any government would ever buy Bitcoin. And that is because if you look at all the arguments that say it protects you against inflation, they're just not true. One, the 21 million limit is not hard. And two, we know there's inflation bugs. Not to mention the ETFs don't have to be fully collateralized. You have no idea the games that could go on there. So the notion that Bitcoin is going to protect you against inflation is just patently ridiculous. And if you look at Bitcoin, it doesn't function as a payment system. It doesn't have any utilitarian purpose. And if you want to understand more about Bitcoin, I would really recommend Hijacking Bitcoin by Roger Ver and Steve Patterson. I just did an interview with Steve Patterson, and they did a great job of explaining why the initial design of Bitcoin could have been a great thing. I mean, if Bitcoin had held true to its design, it could have really been a wonderful global payment system. And maybe it wouldn't have been anywhere near as fast as Visa and MasterCard, but it still could have been, quite a great community. And instead it got hijacked and converted into something that was perfect for a pump and dump tool. And it's done a great job of creating a speculative pump and dump kind of vehicle. Anyway, so the notion that if a government can afford to buy Bitcoin, it can afford to lower taxes. Right? Because if you want to buy Bitcoin as a private person, that should be your right. But you don't need government to mandate taxes, collect taxes, and then put your money in a speculative asset. You should do that, not government. So, so whether it's government making sure, I would say I would much prefer the city of LA to have working fire hydrants than to buy Bitcoin. Right?
Yep.
Okay. And right. And so you serve your governmental purpose, and then if you've satisfied your governmental purpose, you lower taxes and give the money back. Let other people make investments. Okay. So that's number one. To me, governments can, if they can afford to buy into speculative assets, they can afford to lower taxes. But let me keep going. We talked about deglobalization. We talked about AI. In an environment of deglobalization, what should governments do if they're going to make speculative investments or equity investments? What they should do is make sure you are winning at technology, because we know you got to win at technology. The competition over technology is very serious. And so whether it's science and technology or education, you want to make sure you're staying in the competition, right? So that's one, and that's a role of government. The second thing is if all the trading economics are being thrown up in the air, you need to seriously transition your economy to do, whether it's imports, exports, or doing more resilient, self-sufficient for yourself. You want to make sure your industry is as efficient as possible. So if the war in Ukraine is going to end, if you're Germany, you want to bring in Russian gas and bring all those companies back to Germany. You want to make sure, one of Germany's great traditional strengths is its banking system that has really fed liquidity to all the small businesses that are very competitive and do a lot of exports globally. You want that banking system to be healthy. You need to put in your money and making sure that the liquidity is getting to the small business enterprises as opposed to putting it in digital assets. So, it doesn't make sense.
So looking at that the other way around, if you put it into these Bitcoin or whatever speculative assets, then you're taking away from the small companies and the people, basically, right? So
you're taking stuff away from the economic muscle and putting it into economic sugar on the theory that you can catch the wave right. Now, the reason Bitcoin works as an investment is in a pump and dump, you have to bring in a new wave of investors, right? And the problem with Bitcoin, you have about 2% of the last time I looked, you have about 2% of the holders who have about 70% of the Bitcoin. They have huge positions. They have no way of getting out unless you bring in a whole new wave. If they try to get out now, they drive the price way, way down. So their positions are highly illiquid. How do they get out? Well, the way you get out, especially if you can make it secret and tax-free, is you mandate government purchases and you sell into government. Now, government's the last investor in the Ponzi scheme because there's no one else to bring in, right?
Right.
Right. But if you let me mandate purchases of Jell-O, I can run the price of Jell-O or Silly Putty up to the moon, right? Anybody can do that. That's just a financial play. But if you can talk governments with enough political contributions, because remember, you've got the price pumped high, that's the basis of big political contributions. And we saw in the presidential campaign in the US, crypto was the biggest source of political contributions. So you buy enough governments, you get them to mandate purchases. Where's that money going to come from? It's going to come from taxpayers, but it's going to come from their retirement savings, because that's what when government issues bonds and borrows money, that's what it's doing. So it's taxpayers' money or their retirement savings. Once you finish mandating, what can the guys who have the 2% that's now, 70% of the Bitcoin? Well, they can swap Bitcoin for land.
Yep.
What does government own? So Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce, has said the U.S. government has 500 trillion of land and mineral resources, 500 trillion. If you can get Bitcoin high enough, you can swap for that land. And we've seen some of the trial balloons proposing that if you swap for real estate, it's tax-free. And since their cost basis is very low, what a steal, right? So you want to get out of the unreal and you want to get the real.
At the expense of the muscle, as you say, of all of us.
Right.
It's at the expense of whole nations, basically, right?
Right. Whether it's owning our land or investing in our young people and making sure they have the kind of technological skills we need them to have, or repricing how to be competitive globally in changing trading economics. There are multiple areas we need to invest to build our muscle. And putting it. So my attitude is, if the German government wants to own digital assets, have them create some and they can buy that. Right? Right? No, or Hesse or Bavaria can create a community currency and they can buy that. And then you have more liquidity globally to invest in the entrepreneurial changes that need to be made. If you want digital assets, just make them yourself.
Right.
Right? What? Why do you have to buy them from somebody overseas? That's crazy. Right.